"Don't look, I'm naked, in fact," she sobbed. But the mountain man whispered, "You're a goddess." Maria had always felt like she didn't belong in her own skin. Even as a child, she noticed how other girls were praised for their looks, their slim figures, and the way they carried themselves, while she was often told to eat less or watch what she wore. The words, though sometimes gentle, had slowly carved deep grooves of self-doubt in her heart. By the time she reached her 30s, Maria had spent years hiding from mirrors, avoiding photographs, and refusing to step into situations where her body would be on display. Even in front of close friends, she felt uneasy. Her confidence was like a fragile vase that could shatter with the smallest comment. Maria worked in a quiet office job in the city. Her life was predictable, filled with spreadsheets, emails, and the occasional coffee break with coworkers. Yet, despite the calm exterior, there was a storm brewing inside her. Nights were the hardest. Alone in her small apartment, she would sometimes stare at herself in the bathroom mirror, tracing the lines of her body with her eyes, wishing she could see something beautiful. But all she saw were imperfections, flaws that seemed impossible to ignore. It wasn't that Maria didn't try to love herself. She read books, listened to motivational podcasts, and tried meditation. She even joined fitness classes for a few months, but nothing seemed to stick. The world outside was always loud, always judging, and no matter how hard she tried, she felt that her worth was measured in numbers. Numbers on a scale, numbers on a clothing tag. Every small setback felt like proof that she was failing in life, failing to be the person she wanted to be. One afternoon, after another long day at work, Maria decided she needed a break, something more than a weekend in the city or a short trip to a nearby town. She wanted to disappear for a while, to escape the constant pressure of appearances and expectations. After some research, she found a small cabin in the mountains, far from the noise of the city. The cabin was simple, surrounded by tall pine trees and a river that sparkled in the sunlight. There was no Wi-Fi, no television, no one to judge her. It felt like a place where she could finally breathe. Booking the cabin was easy, but Maria felt a nervous excitement as the departure day approached. She packed lightly, bringing only essentials: clothes, a few books, a journal, and her favorite tea. As she zipped up her suitcase, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The reflection didn't make her feel better, but she told herself this trip wasn't about looks. It was about finding peace, finding herself. The journey to the cabin was long but beautiful. As the city skyline faded behind her, she felt a strange sense of freedom. Trees became denser, the air cleaner, and the roads quieter. For the first time in years, she wasn't comparing herself to anyone else. She wasn't thinking about whether her clothes were fashionable or whether her coworkers would approve of her choices. She was simply present, noticing the wind brushing her hair and the sunlight dancing on the leaves. When she finally arrived at the cabin, it was even more beautiful than she had imagined. The small wooden structure sat on the edge of a hill, overlooking a valley filled with wildflowers and a river that wound through the landscape like a ribbon of silver. Maria stepped out of her car and breathed deeply, inhaling the scent of pine and fresh earth. She felt the tension in her shoulders ease, slowly but surely. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had entered a world where she could be herself, without masks or pretenses. Maria unpacked, lit a small fire in the cabin's fireplace, and brewed a cup of tea. She sat by the window, watching the clouds drift across the sky and listening to the gentle murmur of the river below. In that quiet, she felt the weight of years of self-criticism begin to lift. It was as if the mountains themselves were telling her that it was okay to just be, to exist, without constant judgment. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Maria decided to take a walk along the nearby trail. The forest was alive with the sounds of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the distant cry of a hawk. She walked slowly, savoring each step. With every breath, she felt more grounded, more connected to the world around her. The forest seemed to whisper something she had forgotten, that she was part of something larger, something beautiful. Yet, even in this peaceful setting, old fears returned. As Maria returned to the cabin and prepared to shower, she paused in front of the mirror. The old thoughts crept in again, the ones telling her she was too big, too clumsy, too ordinary. She hesitated, feeling vulnerable in a way she hadn't in years. "Don't look. I'm naked and fat," she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible over the sound of the flowing river outside. She wanted to hide, to disappear, to shrink into herself. It was then that she heard a soft knock on the cabin door. Startled, she wrapped a towel around herself and opened it cautiously. Standing there was Thomas, a man who worked in the area maintaining trails and cabins. He was tall, with weathered hands and kind eyes, the kind of eyes that seemed to understand more than words could say. Maria felt a rush of embarrassment, but also a strange curiosity. Thomas smiled gently, noticing her discomfort. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly. "I've seen a lot of people come through here, and the mountains teach us something important. Every person has value. Every person has beauty." His voice was calm, reassuring, and something in it made Maria pause. For the first time, someone was speaking to her, not about how she looked or what she should change, but about who she was, her courage, her resilience, her spirit. Maria nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She realized that this trip was already changing her, even in small ways. The fear and self-doubt that had felt permanent were beginning to loosen their grip. Perhaps this time alone in the mountains, far from the noise and pressure of the city, she could start to see herself differently. Perhaps she could learn to value her body, her mind, and her heart, even if the world had always told her otherwise. That night, as she lay in bed listening to the wind whisper through the trees, Maria felt a flicker of hope. She didn't know exactly what the next days would bring, but she knew one thing. For the first time in a long time, she was ready to face herself, not with fear, but with curiosity. And somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she was stronger than she had ever believed. The next morning, Maria woke to the gentle sound of birds singing outside her window. Sunlight filtered through the pine trees, casting soft golden patterns across the wooden floor. She stretched and took a deep breath, feeling the fresh mountain air fill her lungs. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of calm that wasn't forced or fleeting. There was no rush, no noise, no expectation, just the quiet, steady rhythm of nature. After a light breakfast of toast and fruit, Maria decided to explore the surrounding forest. She slipped into her hiking shoes, grabbed a water bottle, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. The trail ahead wound through tall trees, moss-covered rocks, and fields of wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. The forest felt alive, almost like a living friend welcoming her. With each step, she felt a growing sense of freedom, a lightness she hadn't known in years. About half an hour into her walk, she noticed a small wooden bridge crossing a clear, bubbling stream. The sound of the water was soothing, and Maria stopped to watch it ripple over the stones. She knelt down, dipping her fingers into the cool water. The sensation made her smile, and she realized she hadn't smiled like this in a long time. There was a simple joy in the moment, a reminder that life wasn't just about worry or self-criticism. It was also about small, beautiful experiences. As she continued along the trail, she spotted someone in the distance. It was Thomas. the man who had visited her cabin the night before. He was carrying a bundle of firewood, and his presence was calm and steady. Maria felt a twinge of nervousness. She wasn't used to interacting with people in such a vulnerable place. Her mind raced with thoughts. Do I look okay? Will he think I'm awkward? But then she remembered his words from the night before about beauty and value. Taking a deep breath, she walked toward him, trying to push the insecurities aside. "Good morning," Thomas greeted, his voice warm and friendly. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Maria nodded, a shy smile appearing on her face. "Yes, it really is. The forest. It feels alive." Thomas chuckled softly. "It does, doesn't it? There's something about this place that makes you forget all the noise from the outside world. People come here to escape, but sometimes they leave learning something about themselves instead." They walked together for a while, the trail winding deeper into the forest. Maria noticed the way Thomas moved with ease, navigating the rocks and tree roots as if he had been born in the wilderness. She admired his confidence and calmness, and a strange sense of trust began to grow. For the first time in a long while, she felt she could let her guard down, even if just a little. As they walked, Thomas pointed out different plants and animals, sharing little bits of knowledge. He showed her a patch of wild berries, explaining which ones were safe to eat and which ones weren't. He talked about the birds, the types of trees, and the changes in the forest across the seasons. Maria listened intently, fascinated not just by the forest, but by his passion and respect for the world around him. His words had a soothing rhythm, and she found herself relaxing more with each step. After some time, they reached a clearing with a small pond. The water was still and reflective, mirroring the sky and surrounding trees like a perfect painting. Maria sat down on a rock at the edge of the pond, dipping her toes in the cool water. The serenity of the moment made her heart feel lighter. Thomas sat beside her, and for a while they didn't speak. The quiet was comfortable, not awkward, and Maria realized how rare that felt in her busy, stressful life. Finally she spoke, her voice soft. "I've never felt like this before, just peaceful. It's strange, but good." Thomas nodded, smiling gently. "It's normal to feel like this in nature. The mountains don't judge, they don't rush you, and they don't ask you to be anything other than yourself. That's why people who spend time here often find clarity." Maria looked at him, feeling a mix of gratitude and nervousness. She wanted to express how much she appreciated his kindness, but words felt inadequate. She realized that, in many ways, she had been starved of understanding and acceptance for years. Here, in this quiet place, she was beginning to feel it. Over the next few days, Thomas showed Maria small ways to connect with the environment. They collected firewood, cooked simple meals together, and maintained a section of the trail. Each task, though ordinary, became meaningful. Maria felt a sense of accomplishment that she hadn't experienced in a long time. For once her focus wasn't on her body or how others perceived her, but on what she could do, what she could create, and the small differences she could make in the world around her. One afternoon, after a long day of hiking and tending to the trail, Maria returned to the cabin tired but happy. She prepared a bath, allowing the warm water to ease her aching muscles. As she stepped in, she felt a wave of vulnerability wash over her again. She had always struggled with how she saw herself in the mirror, and being alone in the cabin didn't completely remove those old fears. For a moment she thought about retreating from the water and hiding, but then she remembered Thomas's words about value and beauty. She reminded herself that this was her space, her time to heal, and no one's judgment mattered here. That evening, after dinner, Thomas shared stories from his own life. He talked about growing up in the mountains, the lessons he had learned from hardship, and the people who had influenced him. Maria listened closely, fascinated by his honesty and simplicity. There was a quiet wisdom in his words that resonated deeply with her. She began to see that strength didn't always come from appearances or success. It came from resilience, courage, and a willingness to keep going despite challenges. As the night grew darker, Maria sat by the fireplace with her journal, writing down her thoughts. She reflected on the past few days, noticing how much her perspective was shifting. She felt a growing sense of confidence and self-acceptance. A day, the mountains, the forest, and Thomas's gentle presence were teaching her lessons she hadn't realized she needed. By the end of part 2, Maria was no longer the same woman who had arrived at the cabin. The insecurities were still there, but they were quieter, less powerful. She had begun to understand that her worth wasn't tied to her body or the opinions of others. She had started to see herself as someone capable, strong, and deserving of love and respect, first from herself and then from the world. The journey was far from over, but Maria felt a spark of hope. For the first time, she believed that true change was possible, not through external validation, but through inner acceptance and self-compassion. She went to bed that night feeling lighter, more peaceful, and ready to continue the journey that the mountains had begun for her. The next morning, Maria woke to a soft golden light streaming through the cabin window. The air was cool, and the smell of pine and fresh earth filled her lungs. Today, she felt different. A quiet excitement stirred inside her, like the feeling just before something important happens. It wasn't just the beauty of the forest or the crisp air. It was a sense that she was ready to face herself in ways she hadn't dared before. After breakfast, Maria decided to continue exploring a trail she had only seen from a distance. It wound steeply up the mountainside with rocks and roots that made each step a careful effort. She carried her water bottle and a small backpack, but mostly she carried a growing courage. The trail was harder than she expected, and her muscles ached, but every step brought her a sense of accomplishment. She realized she hadn't challenged herself physically like this in years. The ache in her legs was a reminder of strength, not weakness. About halfway up the trail, she came to a small clearing with a view of the valley below. The sunlight glinted off the river, and she could see the forest stretching endlessly in every direction. She paused to catch her breath, leaning on a large rock, and felt tears prick her eyes. The view was breathtaking, but it also stirred something deeper, a reflection of how far she had come in her own journey. As she sat quietly, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Thomas. He had come to check on the trail and make sure everything was safe. Seeing him there made Maria's heart skip a beat. She felt both nervous and relieved. Nervous because she was still vulnerable. Relieved because he had been a quiet source of support since she arrived. "Hello," he said with a gentle smile. "You're making good progress. This trail can be tricky, but you're handling it well."
Maria nodded, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "Thank you, it's
"Hard, but I feel stronger with every step. Strength comes in many forms. Physical effort is just one. Mental and emotional courage often matter even more." Maria looked at him, unsure what to say. She had heard encouraging words before, but something about his tone was different, calm, sincere, and free of judgment. He seemed to see her, not her body, not her mistakes, but the real her, with all her fears and hopes. After a moment of silence, Thomas spoke again. "There's something I want to show you," he said. "It's not far from here. Come with me." Curious, Maria followed him down a narrow path that led deeper into the trees. After a few minutes, they reached a small, hidden pond. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the sky and surrounding trees like a mirror. Maria knelt at the edge, mesmerized by the sight. For a moment, she simply breathed, feeling a rare sense of peace. Thomas stood beside her, quietly observing. Then he spoke softly. "You see this pond? It's calm, clear, and strong, even though it has rocks beneath it and branches above it. People are like that too. We have imperfections, fears, and struggles, but that doesn't make us less beautiful or less valuable. It's what makes us real." Maria felt a lump in her throat. His words were simple, but they struck a chord deep within her. She had spent years criticizing herself, comparing herself to impossible standards, and feeling ashamed of her body. But here, in this quiet forest, listening to someone who truly seemed to understand, she felt a spark of something new: acceptance. Thomas looked at her gently, his eyes kind and steady. "I want you to hear this, and I want you to believe it. You are strong. You are capable. You are beautiful. You're a goddess, Maria, not because of how you look, but because of who you are, because of your courage, your heart, and the way you keep going, even when it's hard." Maria's breath caught. She blinked back tears, feeling emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Someone, another human being, was telling her she mattered just as she was, not as someone smaller, thinner, or different, but as herself. The words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, comforting and powerful. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Maria simply sat by the pond, letting the calm water and Thomas's words sink in. She thought about all the times she had hidden from mirrors, avoided cameras, and felt ashamed of her body. She realized that she had never truly been seen in a way that felt genuine. And now, finally, she was. The moment felt like a turning point. Maria slowly began to see herself differently. Not perfectly, but beautifully human. She noticed the strength in her arms, the resilience in her legs, and the warmth in her smile. She realized that these were the things that mattered, the qualities that made her who she was. Thomas smiled, sensing the shift in her mood. "The mountains teach us a lot," he said. "Patience, strength, resilience, and sometimes they help us see things about ourselves we couldn't see before. But the real work is believing it inside, not just hearing it from someone else." Maria nodded. She understood. She still had fears and insecurities, but she felt lighter, as if a weight she had carried for years was beginning to lift. She realized that the journey of self-acceptance wasn't about changing who she was. It was about seeing her value clearly, without judgment. After a while, they stood and walked back toward the cabin. The trail felt different now, not just a physical path, but a symbol of her progress. Each step reminded her that she was capable of more than she had believed, both physically and emotionally. She felt a quiet pride in herself, something she hadn't felt in years. Back at the cabin, Maria spent the afternoon journaling and reflecting. She wrote about the pond, Thomas's words, and the realization that her body, her experiences, and her heart were all part of what made her valuable. She realized that she didn't need to shrink or hide. She could embrace her whole self. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maria sat by the fireplace. She felt a deep gratitude for the mountains, the forest, and the people who had helped her see herself in a new light. She understood that the journey wouldn't be easy, that old insecurities might return, but she felt ready to face them with a new mindset. For the first time in a long while, Maria felt hope, real hope, quiet but strong. She realized that the affirmation she had received from Thomas was not just words. It was a mirror reflecting what had always been inside her. She didn't need validation from anyone else. She was learning to validate herself. As she drifted to sleep that night, she thought about the days ahead. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and times when she might feel vulnerable again. But she also knew that she had begun to see her true worth, and that was a powerful gift. She felt a quiet strength in her chest, a reminder that she could face whatever came next with courage and self-respect. And so, Maria's journey continued, not just through the mountains and the forest, but through the inner landscape of her heart and mind. She had discovered a truth that would stay with her. That beauty, strength, and value were not measured by numbers or appearances, but by courage, resilience, and the willingness to love oneself fully. The morning light poured gently through the cabin window, filling the room with warmth. Maria awoke feeling a quiet strength within her that she hadn't felt before. The forest outside was alive with birdsong, and the scent of pine drifted in through the open window. She stretched and breathed deeply, feeling an unusual sense of calm and focus. The pond and Thomas's words from the day before stayed in her mind, giving her courage and a sense of purpose. After a light breakfast, she decided to take another walk, this time along a trail leading to a higher ridge she had spotted the day before. She felt confident enough to try a longer, steeper hike than she had attempted earlier. Each step was a small victory. She noticed the strength in her legs, the stability in her balance, and even the way her lungs worked hard but efficiently. Every ache reminded her that she was alive, capable, and strong. She realized that she had been judging her body for so long, yet it had carried her through life without complaint. As she walked, she thought about the past, the years she had hidden, avoided mirrors, and doubted herself. She reflected on how harshly she had treated her own body, comparing herself to others and measuring her worth in ways that had nothing to do with who she truly was. The mountains, quiet and patient, seemed to echo a lesson she had never fully learned. Self-worth is not determined by appearance, but by resilience, courage, and the kindness we show ourselves in others. Halfway up the ridge, she came across Thomas again. He had been checking the trails, making small repairs where needed. He greeted her warmly, noticing the slight smile on her face. "You're moving faster today," he said. "Looks like someone is gaining confidence." Maria laughed softly. "I guess I am. The mountains are helping me see things differently. Even my body feels different somehow. Stronger, capable, alive." Thomas nodded, his eyes reflecting understanding. "That's exactly it. When we connect with nature, we connect with ourselves. We realize what our bodies can do, what our minds can achieve, and how much strength we have. It's not just about hiking or physical activity. It's about learning to respect yourself." Maria felt a deep gratitude for his presence. He was never pushy, never judgmental, and his words always carried an honesty that she could trust. She realized that this was one of the first times in her life that someone had treated her as a complete person, body, mind, and heart, without focusing on what society considered flaws. As they walked together along the ridge, they came upon a spot with an even more breathtaking view. The valley stretched endlessly below, the river glinting like silver under the sunlight. Wild flowers of every color dotted the hillside, and a gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of blossoms. Maria stopped and took a deep breath, letting the beauty of the moment fill her entirely. For the first time, she felt a sense of pride in herself, not for her appearance, but simply for existing in this world, experiencing it fully, and embracing the moment. Thomas sat on a large rock nearby, watching her quietly. "Sometimes we spend so much energy criticizing ourselves that we forget to notice the world around us," he said. "We forget that we are part of something larger, something beautiful." And when we finally allow ourselves to be present, we discover a strength we didn't know we had. Maria turned to him, feeling a warmth in her chest. I think I'm beginning to understand. It's not about changing myself to fit some standard. It's about noticing my own strength, accepting my body, and being grateful for what I can do. Thomas smiled. Exactly. That realization is the first step to real change. Everything else, confidence, peace, happiness, flows from that. They spent the rest of the morning exploring the ridge, discovering hidden patches of wildflowers and small streams. Thomas showed Maria how to safely cross rocks and climb steeper slopes, always encouraging her while letting her move at her own pace. Maria felt a growing sense of independence and trust in herself. She realized that strength was not just physical. It was also about trusting her instincts, listening to her body, and pushing herself gently but confidently. By the afternoon, they returned to the cabin. Tired but satisfied, Maria decided to try something new. She prepared a small meal for herself using simple ingredients she had brought and fresh herbs she had discovered nearby. As she cooked, she noticed how much she enjoyed the process, the smells, the textures, and the sense of accomplishment in creating something nourishing. Cooking became a metaphor for her life, taking small intentional steps, caring for herself, and finding joy in the process, rather than focusing on perfection. After dinner, Maria took a quiet moment for herself. She sat by the window, journal in hand, reflecting on the day. She wrote about the view from the ridge, the strength she felt in her body, and the sense of peace she was discovering. She realized that the journey was about more than escaping her insecurities. It was about learning to embrace herself fully, with compassion and patience. Later that evening, Thomas came by the cabin with a small basket of wild berries. He had picked them along the trails earlier in the day. I thought you might enjoy these, he said, handing the basket to Maria. They're fresh, sweet, and good for the body. Just like we need to nourish our spirits, we need to nourish ourselves physically too.
Maria accepted the basket with a smile. Thank you.
That's thoughtful. She paused and added softly, You've taught me so much already, without even trying. About strength, acceptance, and self-respect. I didn't realize how much I needed this. Thomas nodded. Sometimes people need a gentle reminder that they are enough as they are. The mountains are patient teachers, and so are the people who walk with you. But ultimately, the belief has to come from inside you. Maria felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the first time, she truly believed that she could carry this new mindset with her, even after leaving the mountains. She realized that the journey of self-acceptance wasn't a single moment, but a series of small steps, each one teaching her something about her worth, strength, and beauty. That night, Maria sat by the fireplace, sipping tea and reflecting on her journey so far. She thought about how far she had come since the first day she arrived at the cabin, feeling lost, self-conscious, and fearful. She now felt stronger, calmer, and more confident in herself. The mountains had shown her that strength and beauty were not measured by size or appearance, but by courage, resilience, and the willingness to embrace life fully. As she prepared for bed, she felt a quiet determination growing inside her. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. Old doubts and insecurities might return. But she now had the tools to face them. She understood that self-love was not a destination, but a journey, one that required patience, practice, and kindness toward herself. Lying in bed, Maria closed her eyes and let the sounds of the forest lull her into sleep. She felt a gentle pride in herself, a gratitude for the experiences she had gained, and a sense of anticipation for the days ahead. The mountains, Thomas's guidance, and her own courage had started a transformation within her, one that would continue long after she returned to the city. For the first time in her life, Maria felt truly capable of embracing herself fully, not just her body, but her mind, heart, and soul. And as she drifted off to sleep, she knew that the next chapter of her journey, learning to carry this newfound strength and self-love into everyday life, was just beginning. The morning sun rose gently over the mountains, casting a warm, golden glow over the cabin and the surrounding forest. Maria woke with a quiet sense of purpose and anticipation. Today she would leave the cabin and return to the world she had temporarily left behind. But unlike the first morning, she did not feel nervous or doubtful. Instead, she felt calm, grounded, and ready. Over the past days, the mountains, the forests, and her time with Thomas had shown her something she had never truly understood before. Her value did not depend on her size, her appearance, or the opinions of others. It depended on her courage, her heart, and her willingness to embrace herself fully. After a light breakfast, she packed her belongings slowly and thoughtfully, taking care to leave the cabin exactly as she had found it. Each movement felt intentional, a reflection of the inner calm she had been cultivating. As she zipped up her suitcase, she paused for a moment to look around the cabin. The walls, the wooden floor, and the simple furniture had become part of her journey. She had not only rested here, but had learned to accept herself, to find strength in her vulnerabilities, and to appreciate the small joys of life. Before leaving, Maria stepped outside to take one last walk along the trail. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustle of leaves, the songs of birds, and the soft murmur of the river flowing in the valley below. She breathed deeply, letting the fresh mountain air fill her lungs, and felt a deep connection to the world around her. She realized that this connection was also a connection to herself, a reminder that she was part of something larger and more beautiful than she had ever understood. As she reached the small pond she had visited before, Maria knelt down and dipped her fingers into the clear water. She gazed at her reflection, noticing the familiar features that she had once judged so harshly. But this time, she saw something different. She saw courage in her eyes, resilience in her posture, and warmth in her expression. She saw a woman who had faced her fears, confronted her insecurities, and begun the journey of self-acceptance. For the first time, she smiled at herself without hesitation or self-criticism. Thomas approached quietly, carrying a small basket of wildflowers he had gathered along the trail. "It's time to go back," he said softly. "But I wanted you to have these as a reminder of your time here." Maria accepted the basket, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. For teaching me, supporting me, for showing me that I can see myself differently." Thomas smiled. "You've done the work yourself, Maria. I only helped you notice what was already inside you. Remember, self-love is a journey, not a destination. Some days will be harder than others, but what you've learned here will stay with you if you carry it with intention." Maria nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She realized that leaving the mountains did not mean leaving behind her progress. Instead, it was an opportunity to bring the lessons she had learned into her everyday life. She could face the world with confidence, kindness toward herself, and the awareness that her worth was never defined by numbers or appearances. As they walked back to the cabin to retrieve her car, Maria felt a deep sense of peace. She noticed the way the sunlight filtered through the trees, how the leaves shimmered in the morning breeze, and the gentle sound of the river below. Every detail seemed more vivid and meaningful than it had before. She realized that part of her journey was learning to notice and appreciate the beauty around her, just as she was learning to notice and appreciate her own inner beauty. Before she got into the car, Maria turned to Thomas. "I feel ready," she said. ready to go back, ready to face life, and ready to continue seeing myself as I truly am. Thomas nodded, his eyes reflecting pride and understanding. You are ready. Remember, courage doesn't mean never feeling fear. It means moving forward even when you do. And you've shown so much courage here. Maria hugged him, feeling a deep sense of connection and gratitude. It was a simple gesture, but it carried the weight of the trust, respect, and understanding that had grown between them over the past days. She realized that human connection, kindness, and encouragement could have as much impact on self-growth as solitude and reflection. As she drove away from the cabin, the mountains gradually receding in her rear-view mirror, Maria reflected on the journey she had taken. She thought about the insecurities she had carried for years, the fear she had felt in showing herself as she truly was, and the small but profound steps she had taken toward self-acceptance. She realized that her journey was far from over, but she now had the tools to continue it: patience, self-compassion, and the courage to face herself honestly. On the drive back, Maria made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to honor her body and her mind, not by striving for perfection, but by acknowledging her strength and resilience. She would practice self-love in her daily life, even in small ways, through movement, rest, healthy meals, and positive self-talk. She would celebrate her achievements, no matter how minor they seemed, and treat setbacks as opportunities to learn rather than proof of failure. By the time she reached the city, Maria felt a quiet but profound shift within her. The familiar streets, buildings, and crowds no longer seemed oppressive. She noticed them with a sense of awareness rather than judgment, and she felt capable of navigating them without losing the sense of peace she had found in the mountains. She understood that her self-worth was not dependent on her environment, but on her own perspective and actions. That evening, Maria stood in front of the mirror in her apartment. For a long time, this had been a source of anxiety, a place where she had faced harsh self-criticism. But tonight, she approached it differently. She looked at herself with gentle eyes, noticing the lines, curves, and features that made her unique. She smiled, not just at her reflection, but at the woman she had become. A woman who had faced her fears, embraced her vulnerabilities, and begun to see herself as worthy and capable. Maria realized that the journey she had begun in the mountains was not about becoming someone new, but about discovering and accepting who she had always been. She understood that self-love was a practice, one that would require patience and effort, but it was possible. She felt a sense of empowerment and freedom, knowing that she could face the world with confidence, compassion, and resilience. In the weeks that followed, Maria carried the lessons of the mountains into her daily life. She continued her journaling, took walks in local parks, and reminded herself of the strength and courage she had discovered. She approached her work, her relationships, and her daily routines with a renewed sense of purpose. Challenges still arose, moments of doubt and insecurity still visited, but she faced them with the tools she had gained, the ability to pause, reflect, and respond with kindness toward herself. Maria's journey had taught her a profound truth. Self-acceptance is not about reaching perfection or meeting anyone else's standards. It is about recognizing one's own worth, embracing one's strengths and imperfections, and cultivating a compassionate relationship with oneself. It is about understanding that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. As Maria looked back on her time in the mountains, she felt gratitude, not only for the beauty of the forest, the guidance of Thomas, and the peaceful cabin, but also for the journey within herself. She understood that she had grown in ways she could not have anticipated, and that growth would continue throughout her life. The mountains had given her a gift far greater than solitude or scenery. They had shown her the path to self-love and inner strength. And so Maria moved forward, carrying the lessons of the mountains in her heart. She walked through life with confidence, compassion, and awareness, ready to face whatever challenges came her way. She had discovered that the greatest transformation comes not from changing oneself to fit the world, but from embracing oneself fully, with courage, patience, and love.